Hello, everyone. This is Franklin Kendrick, the author of the Aberrant series. I'm reading for you today an excerpt from the fourth book in my series, which is called Super Invasion. Chapter 1: The Crash Site. The sky above Boston tore open like an orange peel, revealing the massive, glittering chasm of space. Out of this opening shot a sleek, metallic vessel shaped like a teardrop. The spaceship, not of this earth, streaked across the sky, trailing a glittering tail behind it that burned like fireworks. Though this display was beautiful and terrifying to behold, it was not the first indicator that strange things would be happening that evening. What humanity first noticed was, in fact, a disappearance. "Do you see that?" asked Tiff, one of the specialists at the Boston Institute of Space. She pointed at her glowing computer monitor as her heavy-set coworker slid his rolling chair across the room. The man, named Henry, held a half-eaten glazed donut in his sticky fingers. Henry squinted at the screen for a few moments before replying. "I don't see anything." Tiff pressed her lips together for a brief moment, then said, "Exactly. Don't you recognize this?" She zoomed into the patch of empty space and circled it with her cursor. "That's where the Black Knight satellite is supposed to be, but it's gone. Vanished." Henry gave her an impatient look, sucked the sugar from his fingers one at a time, then motioned for her to move aside. She didn't protest and slid her chair away so that he could commandeer her computer. After a minute of clicking around the monitoring software, Henry sat back in resignation. "I don't know what to tell you," he said. "Maybe it's a glitch in the software. After all, there are any number of satellites being tracked every minute." "Yes, but what if it's not just a glitch?" Tiff pressed on with concern etched across her features. "Do we have to call somebody to let them know?" This got a rise out of Henry, who nearly choked on his spit as he laughed. "Who do you expect us to call?" he asked. "The armed forces? This isn't a movie, you know. I don't exactly have a direct line to NASA. All we can do is record what we find and then transmit the data to their databases." As he talked, a blip appeared on the screen with a tiny electronic notification. Henry leaned forward to verify the record. "See? It was just a glitch. Now, can we get back to another uneventful night?" He rolled his chair away, back over to his box of 3 remaining donuts. But as Tiff returned to her spot in front of the monitor, her eyes narrowed. There was something funny about the new record that had appeared in the blank piece of space. It wasn't the Black Knight satellite. The Black Knight didn't move with such a quick rate of speed, and it certainly didn't move out of its orbit. Whatever this object was, it was shooting towards the Earth with immense speed. The scanning software could barely keep up. "Henry," she started to say, but before she could finish her sentence, the entire station began to shudder as if they were experiencing a sudden earthquake. Everything in the room shook and teetered on the edge. A row of heavy reference books toppled over like a line of dominoes, sending a thick piece of rock rolling off the shelf. It slammed into the linoleum floor, causing a crack in the material, and also splintering the rock into pieces. Henry braced himself against his desk, covering his pens and other instruments with his fingers spread wide, until a few seconds after the shuddering began, it stopped. The silence didn't last long, however, because within moments there was a deep boom from somewhere off in the distance. Henry's eyes locked onto Tiff's. "That was an impact," he said. With the quickest speed that Tiff had ever seen the man move, Henry began snatching things from his desk and shoving them into his rucksack. "What are you doing?" asked Tiff. "Shouldn't we call somebody?" Instead of a straight-up answer, Henry jabbed his finger at some of the remaining papers tacked onto the corkboard. "Grab the list of contacts over there, quickly, and grab something to write with. And a camera. We need something huge, high quality. There's a Nikon over on the shelf. We will want to take some pictures with the highest quality." "Pictures of what, though?" "Why can't you keep up?" said Henry with a wave of his hand. "Something huge crashed not far from here, and I'll be damned if someone else is going to document it first. I'm jotting down the coordinates now. Here." He tossed her a set of keys. They jangled as they flew through the air, and she caught them, feeling the sharp jab as their jagged edges struck the soft flesh of her hand. Henry's face was alight with such excitement that it was as if he were a child on Christmas morning. He grinned broadly. Go start the car. Minutes later, the two of them were racing down the access streets of the Boston waterfront. Tiff was managing the map on her phone screen, shouting out orders as they reached various intersections. Most of the surrounding area was industrial, with concrete barriers and walls keeping workers from tumbling to their deaths or becoming injured. Beyond the chain-link fence that seemed to stretch everywhere, Tiff registered a faint orange glow, which she pointed out. There it is, the crash site. I see it. Henry was still smiling. It was a passion that Tiff had never seen on him during the entire time she had worked with him. He licked his lips. I bet it's a foreign satellite, he mused. Or maybe a piece of space debris that took out the Black Knight. Maybe there are even pieces of the Knight entangled in it. Wouldn't that be something? He turned along another access road that took them closer to the long fingers that made up the pier system. Tiff didn't want to disagree. Figuring out what the Black Knight was made of, a mysterious satellite that had orbited Earth for who knew how long, would be a surefire way to cement their names in the history books. They would be skyrocketed into fame. However, there was always a fear in the back of Tiff's mind that objects that fell from space could be harmful to get close to. What if there was radiation, or some other disease from the atmosphere that nobody had heard of before? There was a reason that people were usually advised to stay back whenever something crashed to Earth. She swallowed the lump in her throat and simply agreed with him. You won't get us too close, will you? She asked, her voice trembling slightly due to her fear, but also from the jolting of the vehicle as it crossed over a series of raised speed bumps. Not too close, Henry agreed, but close enough. At least the general public can't get over here. He glanced up out of the windshield as if looking for drones, but there was none. They turned another corner and came to a chain-link fence that was locked tight by a thick steel chain and padlock. He screeched the car to a halt and promptly turned off the engine. Tiff followed him as he got out of the car. She walked over to the gate and looked through the grid of metal. They weren't far from the crash site now. She could see shimmering heat where whatever it was had slammed into the ground, which was part of a concrete platform down by the water. Great chunks of the structure had broken free and fallen into the salty sea that lapped gently against the pier, as if nothing untoward had happened. The only sign that something had disturbed the peacefulness of the evening was the orange glow, the shimmering of heat, and the great crater that obscured whatever the object was. Looks like this is as close as we can get, she said in a relieved voice. But that relief was snatched away in an instant when she heard the jangle of the chain-link gate and turned to her left to see Henry climbing upwards. Henry, what do you think you're doing? Getting a better view, he said. Within moments, he had made his way over the top of the fence, which unfortunately did not have barbed wire, to Tiff's dismay, and he hopped down to the other side with a thud as his sneakers hit the concrete. The camera was slung over his shoulder and had made it in one piece. He hurried off at a brisk pace, disappearing behind a set of barrels, while Tiff remained on the other side of the fence. Henry, please. Henry appeared further away, the same look of determination on his face, as he pulled out the camera and checked that it was all in working order. You can just stay there, I won't be long. A zipping sound got louder overhead, and both he and Tiff looked up to see a few drones flying in. Their red lights flashed every few seconds. There might not be much to see from above, but Henry still seemed very optimistic from his vantage point as he inched closer to the lip of the crater. I'm going to get a few shots, said Henry, as he crouched down, peering over the edge of the smashed concrete with the camera up to his eye. There were a few clicks, then he repositioned himself a few feet to the right. Steam was billowing out of the opening of the hole. Tiff was starting to become comfortable. Nothing bad had happened so far, so she guessed that there was no harm in being so close. She was more concerned with heat than anything else. Henry would have complained if there was heat and moved away by now. But he did not, which hopefully meant that the two of them would be able to return to the Institute in one piece with no side effects. Even from such a distance, Tiff could hear Henry muttering to himself as he continued to document the crash. This is crazy. Somebody's going to have to pay a ton for this kind of imagery. What do you see? Is it a rock? Henry shook his head. It's not a rock. I can't see much through the smoke, but it looks like something shiny, something man-made. Maybe a satellite? Henry hesitated. Not like any satellite I've seen. He adjusted his lens and searched for any kind of markings that would tell him what the object actually was. Overhead, the drones continued to zigzag gracefully over the crash site, but it looked like they couldn't get a good look either with all the smoke and steam. Suddenly, Henry's snapping increased at a rapid rate. "I see something," he hollered out of the corner of his mouth. Another blast of clicks. Then, "It looks like there's something crawling out of it. I think I can get a little closer." Henry stepped closer to the edge of the crater, the camera up to his eye. In an instant, his foot overstepped, and Tiff screamed as she watched the man go falling headfirst into the hole in the ground. Tiff's heart raced as she feared the worst. Her coworker was dead. He had slipped and broken his neck. How was she ever going to explain this to the higher-ups at the observatory? She was just pulling out her phone to dial 911 when there came a moan from the crater. It was unmistakably Henry. He was alive. "Henry," she said, a relieved smile on her face. Maybe she could climb over the barrier and help him. But in an instant, there was no need to climb the barrier. The two of them were on the same side once more because Tiff's jaw dropped as she registered Henry flying limply out of the crater. His overweight body soared into the sky as if someone had just chucked him like an overpumped football, and he landed with a gasp on his back, not even 2 feet from where she stood. As she rushed to crouch beside him, a massive streak of light shot out of the crater and rocketed across the sky. It was headed for the tall buildings of the city, and within moments it had disappeared. Tiff turned her attention to her injured coworker. His chest rose as he took a shuddering gasp. "You're alive!" Tiff cried, grabbing onto one of his hands. "What happened down there? What was that light?" Henry's eyes opened, peering through a layer of tears as he managed to raise his free hand, which still clutched the camera. With a painful wince, he forced the camera into Tiff's hand. It's all there," he said with great difficulty. "The proof." Tiff put the camera around her neck and went to lift up on Henry's shoulder. "We can deal with that later," she said. "First, we're getting you out of here. Can you stand up?" Henry snatched the collar of her shirt and pulled her face so close to his that she could feel flecks of spit as he pleaded with her. "Yes, we have to get out of here. That thing, it's not human." This is Franklin Kendrick. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the convention.
Hello, I'm Andrew Kirshner. I'm honored to be part of Superhero Fiction. I will be reading the third book from my superhero, Ms. Infinity, Infinite Moon, prologue and chapter 1. Prologue is Beastly Arrival. Thank you. A creature was lurking deep in the shadows, hidden from the bustle of the Queen's evening. In the dead silence of the rooftops she sat, high above the street, watching the city with hard determination in her red eyes. Unseen though she was an aberration. Though she stood erect like a human, the rest of her appearance was that of a tremendous feral beast. She was perhaps 12 feet tall, covered in black fur, with powerful claws and terrible sharp fangs in her snout. Were this another place, she would surely have made numerous kills by now. Across the eastern United States, there was many a grisly unsolved murder, a body mauled, half-eaten, all but destroyed. The attacks were attributed to an unidentifiable wild animal, with none able to explain how this occurred in the middle of a city. Still she hungered for more, and great was the temptation. To a monster like her, New York was a candy shop, tremendous in size and scope, anonymous, with men all over, ready for the taking. But she had bigger things on her mind. There was a target here worth more than the sum of all the kills on Earth. This was the home of the most powerful person on the planet, if not all creation, Ms. Infinity. It was murder following a superhero. She was lightning fast, but the creature's eyes were fast too. She could see enough to make out her direction, even if she could not follow. And she had patience, endless patience. Night after night, block after block, clue by infinitesimal clue, she tracked her. Now at last her efforts were paying off. This was it, her haunt. If she stayed here long enough in the shadows, sooner or later she would appear. As the night deepened, she waited. a dark figure alone on a deserted high place above the city. For hours, painful hours, she saw nothing. Each minute was worse than the last. Longer, slower, hungrier. Surely she could make one kill, but no, not now. Of all times, not now. She could not afford to take that risk. And then, there she was. Out of nowhere she flew. She seemed godlike, an incomprehensibly beautiful, tall, dark woman in a blue and gold costume. She almost seemed to glow, her hair and cape blowing perfectly behind her as she flew. Here was a woman who lived. What must it be like to be her, to never hunger like she did, never face the horrors of her life, to be loved, admired? She was carrying a man, devastatingly handsome, fair-skinned, of medium height. That was definitely the same man as last time. Was it her boyfriend? She watched intently with her superhuman sight as she descended and put him down. They kissed, then she flew away and disappeared. The creature kept her eye on the man. Seconds after Ms. Infinity disappeared, she noticed a small, dark young woman walk out of an alleyway. She had dark hair pulled in a ponytail and brown eyes behind black-rimmed glasses. They embraced, kissed, and began walking away together. She thought for a moment. Was this man two-timing? Unlikely. He had to know the risks of cheating on a woman as powerful as Ms. Infinity. Besides, how long could that girl have possibly been waiting there? No, that little woman was her. She must be another shapeshifter. She watched as they walked. The man and the little disguised Ms. Infinity stopped at an apartment building. They kissed, then they parted. The man went inside. The woman moved on. She walked a few more minutes before finally arriving in a row house a few blocks away. The creature leapt into the darkness. A few seconds later, a tall, statuesque woman stepped out into the street. She quickly mixed into the crowd. She took note of the two residences and moved on to the subway. Tomorrow she would make her first move. So a little word about this character, Ms. Infinity. She is a very powerful superhero from another world, another planet. In her secret identity, Bonnie Boring, she works in a retail job in the Big Box. It's called a big box store, Big Box in Woodside, Queens. So low-paying retail job, a lot of powers. All right, so I could have said that before, but okay. Think of this as the cold open. So, Chapter 1, Meet the Parent. Hal Holstein seemed to wander aimlessly through the Queen's late afternoon. Though he was only a few blocks away from home, he must have looked lost. Truth be told, he knew where he was going. It was just that his nerves were getting the best of him. From all he had heard, Betty Boring sounded nice, but he was her daughter's boyfriend. That would have to make her suspicious of him. That was just the way it worked. Also, she had superpowers. Lots of them if she was anything like Bonnie. What would she do to him if she got angry? He took out his cell phone and made a call. When it picked up, the woman on the other side laughed. Again, Hal? Come on, it's enough already. You're not headed for a murder trial. It was Lisa Lynn, Bonnie's best friend. I know, Lisa, said Hal, but please, is there anything else you can tell me? I mean, this is Bonnie's mother. I really don't want to mess this up. Oh, don't be so silly, said Lisa. Mrs. B is really nice. You don't have to be so nervous. Easy for you to say. You're not her daughter's new boyfriend. Believe me, Hal, she likes you. It's fine. She likes me? What do you mean? She's never seen me, has she? You know what? Don't worry about it. Just be cool, all right? But what do you mean, said Hal. But Lisa had hung up. Hal was about to call Lisa back, but before he could act, Bonnie came walking up. She smiled warmly at Hal, her arms rising up to meet him. Hal, love of my life, come here. I missed you. It's been like an hour, said Hal with a nervous laugh. Bonnie put her arms around Hal. It's not the same at work, and an hour is too much. Hey, what did you bring me? That's too big to be jewelry. I baked a challah. I hope it's not presumptuous, but you said your mom was making chicken soup. Don't be silly. Come in, come in. Hal looked before him at a line of attached flat red brick houses extending halfway down the block. Between the identical steps and windows and overall blandness, it looked like any other place in Queens. He looked back at Bonnie. So which is your house? Over here, this one. Wow. Looks like the rest of the block. What did you expect? Come in. Hal entered and was struck by how ordinary and indeed how homey the place was. He was inside a nice, neat living room with a hardwood floor decorated with Persian rugs. It was finished with soft, light blue couches and a reclining chair. On the wall were the usual family pictures, mostly of Bonnie from over the years. His attention was grabbed by one particularly awkward teenage image of Bonnie that must have been a class picture. She was smiling uneasily in front of a blue background, hair in a braid falling neatly over her shoulder to her right. Could have been anyone's class picture. A woman came out from the kitchen who looked quite a lot like an older version of Bonnie. Her black hair was in a braid. She was dressed in a tan skirt and a green peasant blouse. Pleased to meet you, she said. I'm Betty Boring. Bonnie has told me so much about you. Hi, said Hal Holstein. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Boring, or is it Dr. Boring? I hear you're a physics professor. I am, but you're an adult. Please call me Betty. So what is it you do? I know you work at the big box, but... I have a degree in communications. I'm looking for a job as a TV reporter. Really? Bonnie never mentioned that. Yeah, I guess she wouldn't. So can I help with anything? Do you need help in the kitchen? Betty laughed. Oh, no, Hal, I'm all set there. Just sit down. We'll take care of things. Bonnie, did you put out all the snacks? Oh, said Bonnie, Betty stepped back from the hallway. This girl of mine, she can fly across an entire solar system in minutes, but she can't walk across a living room to put out a few snacks for guests. Honey, please take care of those now. Hal sat down, but he felt uncomfortable. Being waited on felt strange. For one thing, Bonnie obviously didn't like the job of host. She charged back and forth like a teenager just woken up and forced to clean her room. She rolled her eyes at Hal as she poured M&Ms into a bowl. Can you put out some chips and salsa too? Called Betty. There weren't any, said Bonnie. Where did you look? In the fridge. I don't keep chips and salsa in the fridge. Look in the pantry. I can get them if you, started Hal, but by the time he was halfway through the sentence, the chips and salsa were in front of him. Bonnie had clearly used her super speed. Manners, Bonnie, said Betty, looking unnerved as she stepped back in from the kitchen. Oh, that's all right, said Hal. I'm not bothered. I've seen a lot more than that. It's just bad manners, said Betty, looking hard at Bonnie. I'm sorry, said Bonnie, though she seemed not to mean it much. Bonnie and Betty were now looking at each other in hard silence. Hal looked on at the two women staring each other down. There was something intent in their eyes, something more than just family strain. He was wondering if they were using their alien communication, though there was no way of knowing this. Their language could not be picked up by human senses. He tried to stay apart from the situation, but the discomfort was growing. Finally, he broke in. Hey, it smells great in here. Is that the soup? Bonnie looked away and sat down next to Hal, her head bowed in childish indifference. Hal tried to keep from showing his nerves. Yes, said Betty, turning and looking kindly at Hal. Chicken soup. So, Betty, said Hal, are you sure I can't help you and set the table or something? I'll tell you what, said Betty. I have one job you can do. Why don't you come and give the chicken soup a taste? Betty led Hal into the kitchen, a narrow but comfortable one like many in the city. There were several pots going, including a large stock pot with chicken soup. I'd love to hear what you think, said Betty. I have a recipe from home. From home? So that means, Betty laughed as she answered, it's an alien recipe, yes. I mean, it's just food, I promise. It won't make you grow an extra head. Everything is from the grocery store right down the block. What's different is just the choice of ingredients. I'm curious about your opinion. Yeah, chicken soup is in my family, said Hal with a smirk. All right, I'll give it a try. Betty took some soup on a ladle. Hal sipped it up, and his eyes lit up. This is good. What's in here? Some fruit, hints of apple and strawberry. Really, in a soup? That's different. Listen, said Betty, I don't mean to cause a scene. I just feel it's rude to be using power like that. I mean, you wouldn't like a rich person flaunting money in front of you, right? Okay, I guess not. But then this is who Bonnie is, and I'm used to it. Look, it's not what you think. When she had me up on Starship Infinity, she even made the bed for me. Wow, Bonnie did actual housework? That's hard to imagine. No, I mean she made the bed. Only took her a second, too. It was pretty impressive. Of course she did, said Betty. Listen, Hal, maybe these things didn't bother you, but when she's ostentatious with power, it sends a very dangerous message. I want you to remember you are her equal. Honey, I do hope you speak up for yourself if she ever tries to walk over you. Hal was starting to feel intimidated. He fully understood Betty's concern. She clearly had his best interests at heart, though no doubt she was also worried about her daughter and the consequences of her own hubris. Whatever it was, though, it didn't make his own position any easier. From every word she said, it seemed like his relationship with Bonnie was on the line. He tried to keep from looking down in shame as he spoke. Well, yeah, I do. Honey, I just want to be sure you stand up for yourself, right? If you're ever intimidated by her powers, let me set you straight on that, or her if I have to. Well, no, I can speak up. Have you ever done so with her? You promise? Of course, I said something when she put me to sleep. What? When she what? Hal felt the instant jerk when he had the sudden revelation he had said the wrong thing. Oh, it wasn't a big deal. She put you to sleep? Well, before I talk to her, I just want to make sure I have this right. She put you to sleep? Hal realized there was little point in covering for his girlfriend. He was clearly in the presence of a woman who likely exceeded even Ms. Infinity in power. Yeah, he said, his heart now in his throat. I thought so. Excuse me a moment. Bonnie dear, said Betty, can we just step into the other room? We need to have another conversation. Bonnie followed Betty into the basement stairs, just far enough to be out of Hal's earshot. Hi, Mom, said Bonnie. Listen, I'm sorry, you were right. I will be a better host and I'll try to be less rude. Never mind that, said Betty sharply. What did I just hear? Did you put him to sleep? Oh, you did, didn't you? Yeah, what happened? When I had him on my ship on the way to the mission, Hal had a lot of trouble dealing with hyperspace. He came out looking traumatized. So for the way home, I put him to sleep so he wouldn't have to experience it again. And he asked you to do this? Well, no, I told him afterwards. So what did you do exactly? It was a kiss. A kiss? Yeah. Bonnie, that is most certainly not okay. Don't you see the connotations? What if it were done to you or me? I'm horrified just thinking about it. Hal's mind is not your object to toy with. Well, what did Hal say when he found out? Eventually he said that he wished I had asked him first. He said, that's all? My word, Bonnie, you certainly have a catch here. I'm more worried about him than ever, but you, okay, if he had consented, no, you never think that you have the right to someone else's mind. That is not up for discussion. I'm sorry. I'm afraid that's not good enough, Bonnie. I'm watching you very, very carefully. I see you have the best of intentions, still it's an abuse, and a very serious one. I'm on the verge of revoking your right to be Ms. Infinity. I won't do that yet. I hope I never have to, but there is one thing for certain. Bonnie, you are forbidden to use your mind powers. You can never read or take control of a person's mind. No exceptions. Do you understand? It may seem strange that Bonnie needed her mother's permission to use her alter ego. Bonnie was an adult, fully 26 years old. However, the culture they came from was a very conservative one, where obeying one's parents was an absolute, even in adulthood. True, they had rebelled profoundly against the sexism of their native world. The fact that a female had such an identity as Ms. Infinity was a powerful symbol of that. Yet, they still maintained vestiges of their culture, and the belief in parental supremacy was a very basic tenet. It went with crucial notions of propriety, which Bonnie had also violated. Bonnie looked very upset. Her head was bowed, tears forming in her eyes. She looked up at her mother just long enough to say, I'm sorry, I do understand. The purpose of your alter ego is to serve others. If you disrespect them, then you are no hero. Don't you forget that. I won't. Once dinner began, Bonnie was sitting close to Hal, even serving him, though, as always, her mother did most of the work. Nonetheless, she and Betty were soon laughing with each other. My word, Hal, said Betty. I see her on the TV and my heart stops. It's the strangest thing. It's her, but it isn't her. You know she's prettier as Bonnie, don't you think? Oh, said Hal, definitely. I've even told her so. It's true, said Bonnie. He has. A man after my own heart, said Betty. But as foreign as it all is, that's my baby up there. She's been through so much and she deserves this. She must like watching me, said Bonnie. She sneaks over to my superhero battles and watches. You know that, Hal. I just found that out. She uses her invisibility. Wait, said Hal, you can become invisible? Well, I guess I should assume you have any power until I hear otherwise. She's neglecting to mention that I'm there to help, said Betty. Lisa and I are. We both watch out for her. Whenever Lisa sees her run off to change, she covers for her and alerts me. She finds other ways to help too. Since this whole thing began, we are her rear guard. That I never asked for, said Bonnie. Well, you can't get rid of us. We love you and we aren't letting you face danger alone. Hal's eyes lit up as he listened. I had no idea of any of this, but wow, that's great. I would love to make some kind of contribution if I can. Not so fast, Hal, said Bonnie. I'm keeping you where I can see you. He smiled, but behind it, there was a growing frustration that he did not feel at liberty to express. It wasn't too kind to her to speak to him like that. Did she hear herself? Not that she was any better to her mother. Why was she so mistrustful, even to those closest to her? True, her childhood had been shockingly hard. Betty told Hal much about their lives on their native planet, called a name that translated to center, because the government propaganda had people there believing that it was the center of the universe. Bonnie's Centurion name translated to bland beauty. Hal had heard from Bonnie that it was a very repressive society and a deeply sexist one at that. Bonnie and Betty had spent her childhood in hiding from her father. She was considered a pariah because she was a girl who was stronger than the boys around her. What Hal did not know was that Bonnie's father had murdered Betty's entire family. It was an act of cruel retaliation when she freed her daughter from her father's imprisonment. He had known that their life there had been sad, but he had not fully appreciated how sad. Still, Betty was no less sympathetic to Hal's situation. Bonnie spoke proudly of how Hal stepped in to take care of his little sister in the midst of his parents' divorce. Oh, honey, said Betty, it does break my heart to hear of divorce. I can only imagine how it felt when it happened. It's that stability, that rock, and then it's gone. Bless you for being there for your sister. Thank you, said Hal. She makes me proud. I don't doubt it, and I'm quite sure that your parents are proud of you as well. You are an example. Honey, I'm very glad that you are my daughter's boyfriend. She has chosen well. Betty embraced Hal warmly before he left. Please come again soon. Please come again soon, dear, she said. And remember, you always have a place here. Oh my goodness, said Hal. Thanks. Hal now began to walk towards home. He was only 50 feet from his apartment building, walking through the shortcut in the alleyway, when he came across a tall young woman. At first he barely noticed her, but as she approached, he found that he was completely unable to take his eyes off her. Within a second or two, he was frozen in place, staring into her eyes. That's right, she said. Don't you worry. This will be over soon, and you won't remember a thing. You're just going to tell me all you know about Ms. Infinity. So that's the prologue in Chapter 1, Ms. Infinity, Infinite Moon.